All right, today we're going to look at some more things that we can do with these algebra tiles. They're kind of messy, right? I didn't really clean them up after last time. All right, so make sure you have your algebra tiles out. We're going to be using the quadrant mat. So we use the quadrant mat for any multiplication, any division, and factoring falls under division, right? Because you're actually literally dividing up a trinomial typically into two smaller pieces, okay? But first let's look at multiplication because I think it's a little easier, okay? So first of all, the things that are being multiplied go in these tracks. The result goes in these boxes. So notice a couple of things. Notice 2 of these tracks are positive, 2 of them are negative. Same with the quadrants, right? 2 are positive and 2 are negative. Okay, so you're going to need to make sure that you're careful about your signs because it can really change what your answer is. So let's say that I wanted to look at 2x times x. Okay, so for that, remember what is being multiplied goes in the tracks. So we have a positive 2x times a positive x. So what's being multiplied goes in the tracks, okay? And the product or the result is what's going to go in the square. So what you have to do is you have to pick things that are going to perfectly line up and make you a perfect rectangle. That's going to be kind of the key to all multiplication and division problems. So notice we're in the positive quadrant, so I'm going to need my blue. So notice this is literally x by x, so we need our x squared piece, okay? And we didn't use our x squared piece much in the last lesson. We're going to use it a whole lot today. This is also x by x, these two pieces, right? This by this, and so it's also x squared, okay? So if we wanted to know what 2x times x is, we can kind of move out what's in the track, and the answer would just be 2 of these x squareds, or 2x squareds, okay? Notice that if we change the signs, it just changes the locations of what we do. So let's say we were doing negative 2x times negative x. Now we know a negative times a negative is a positive, but let's put that aside for a minute. Okay, so negative 2x times a negative x. Okay, notice you're still wanting to fill in a rectangle where there's no gaps. So we're still going to have x by x for x squared there, x by x for an x squared there. So, and we are still in a positive quadrant, right? So we end up with, again, positive 2x squareds. Okay. So what about a negative times a positive? So let's do negative 2x times positive 2x. So it doesn't matter which way you go. I'm going to do my negative this way, and then I'll go positive this way. But I could have very well done positive this way and negative this way. Notice either way I'm going to end up with a negative quadrant. Doesn't matter whether it's here or here. Okay. So negative 2x times positive 2x. And then again, I need to be able to fill all of this in to be a perfect rectangle with no gaps. So I have x by x here. I have x by x here. I have x by x here. And finally here. Okay. So negative 2x times 2x is what we always knew it to be. Oh, by the way, I didn't necessarily use the right color, but remember, it really doesn't matter what color I use, right? I really should have used these squares, right? But the fact that we were in a negative quadrant tells me that it's negative regardless of which color I use when I work these out, so it really doesn't matter. Okay? So that's multiplying monomials. Okay, mono means one, so one-termed expressions. But let's look at multiplying binomials. So bi means two, so two-part expressions. So we're going to set up a few of these, and the first one we're going to do is x plus 2 times x plus 1. So I'm showing you like the mini quadrant mats, okay, but we're going to use the overall one. So remember, the things that are being multiplied go in the tracks. So I have x plus 2, so x plus 2, and then times a positive x plus 1. So this is going to go on the positive side also. And your goal is to fill this in perfectly, again, so that it's a rectangle with no gaps. So x by x is going to give me x squared. But here it's going to be x times 1, right, or x by 1. So it's going to be an x there. Here it's going to be this x by these 1s, right? So these two spots are going to be x's. And then lastly for here and here, because again we have to have a perfect rectangle, we don't have it right now, right? We have these gaps here. But notice this would be a 1 by 1, right, which would just be 1s. So I just need to kind of fill in the corners here with my units. That's where your units will kind of always go, is in the corner. So for this one, what I was multiplying was in my track, so I'm going to kind of slide that out of the way. Okay, and then my answer is what I have here. So notice my answer for x plus 2 plus, or sorry, x plus 2 times x plus 1 would be x squared plus 1, 2, 3 x's plus 2 1's. Okay, so x squared plus 3x plus 2. Okay, so if you wanted to draw this, if I ask you to do this on the homework or something like that, you can draw it just like we had it there, right? So you can literally show that you started off with x. I forgot which way I went. I think I went plus 1 here. And then x plus 2 here. And I ended up with a result of this right here. A little sloppy. But my answer, of course, was x squared plus, so if I want to label these are x squareds, these are x's, and these are 1's. So if you're showing your homework, it might be helpful for you to show something like that. So I have x squared plus 3x plus 2, 2 1's. Okay, so let's try this next one, x plus 3 times x minus 1. So we're going to put what we're multiplying in the tracks. So we've got x plus 3 So the nice thing about the algebra blocks that you might see in your classrooms are they're just a little bit heavier than like the foam that I'm using is kind of trying to move around on me quite a bit. So if that is frustrating to you, just know that when you get to your teaching location, they'll probably have like a little bit more sturdy manipulatives for you to use. Okay, so I've got x plus 3, right? And then notice when I did the x minus 1, I had to put this minus 1 down here because I had to make it in the negative track, right? So I want to make a perfect rectangle, but notice here I'm going to have to go up and down. I'm going to have to go top and bottom here. So x by x would be x squared. X times the 1's would be x strips. And then x times 1 would be a negative x, so I'll use my yellow. And then lastly, I need to fill in the gappage here. Notice these are reds, right? Because it's a red times a green, or a negative times positive, which we know to be a negative. So then you slide out what was in your tracks and pair up anything that might simplify. Okay, so notice we have x squared, but then I have plus 3x and then minus x. So these two can go away. Oh, I forgot to move that out of the way. So these two can kind of move off to the side, right? They're not in the really picture anymore. So I end up with just, as far as my answer goes, now if you were going to draw this, you would need all of this, okay? But as far as what the final answer is, it's just x squared, the simplified answer, plus 2x minus 3, yeah. All right, so notice this is exactly what you would get if you FOILed this, right, and added like terms, but this exercise could actually be used on students that may not know FOIL yet. It's really just kind of a visualized puzzle and knowing how to put the pieces together. As long as they know that, hey, it needs to be a rectangle with no spaces, then they should be able to kind of work this out. All right, so what about this one? 2x plus 3 times x minus 4. You know, the bigger the quantities are, the harder it is to try to fit in your little quadrant map, but do the best you can. So 2x plus 3 and then times x minus 4. So the x needs to go in the positive, but the minus 4 has to go down here because then minus 4 is negative. So we'll start here, right? I need x by x here, but notice I need another x by x here, okay? And then I have, let me slide the picture over here. Notice I have a x by 1, so those are just going to be x's. Everywhere from here down is just going to be x by 1's, right? But they're all going to be on the negative side, so we'll make them yellow in my case. cut the yellows out myself, and I did it pretty roughly, so if you're wondering why my yellows look sloppy, that's because I did them, and I did them kind of sloppy. And then we just need to fill in the rest, right? Now notice, this is 3 units by 4, right? So we're actually going to have to do a lot of these little red guys. This is where I really wish that I had my algebra blocks that are a little bit tougher and sturdier, but that's okay. Okay, and then get rid of what's in the tracks, because that is not part of our answer, and it's best to just slide those out so you don't get those confused with what your answer is. Okay, and the answer is what's making the rectangle, right? So we have 2x squareds. We have some pairs that we could kind of get rid of, right, if we're trying to simplify this. So notice these 3 positive x's can pair up with maybe 3 of these negative ones, okay, 1 and 1. And so what's left is your answer, right? So 2x squared minus 5x minus 12. Okay? So that's one that really kind of uses a lot of our blocks. So notice we got just what we would have with FOIL. 2x squared plus 5, actually minus 5, right? Because they were yellow. They were also in the negative quadrant. So minus 5x and then minus 12. Okay, so lastly, let's figure out x minus 2 times x minus 3. X minus 2 times x minus 3. So I'm going to do my x minus 3's horizontally. So notice I have to split it up like this because it's not plus 3, so I can't put it over here. Okay, so it's x minus 3. And then I also have x minus 2. Same thing, right? X is positive, but this is negative. So notice this is one of the interesting ones where you're actually going to have to use all the quadrants. You're going to have to make everything a perfect rectangle. Okay, so just go a quadrant at a time and make it work. Okay, we have x by x here, so I'll put a positive x squared there. Here I have x by negative 1, so I'm going to need negative x's to fill in here. Okay, up here I'm going to have negative 1's times positive x, so I'm going to need to fill in some x strips there. And then last but not least, notice these are 1 by 1's, right? It's a negative times a negative, which we know to be a positive, but notice pictorially it shows that it's positive anyway, right? So these are all going to be positives. All right. So take away the tracks. I am struggling to keep these pieces from falling. All right, so notice we don't have any positive negative pairs to pair up, okay? We just have the things we took away from the track, right? So our answer is x squared minus 5x's and then plus 6, right? And notice that's exactly what we would get if we think about foiling this guy, right? We would get x squared minus 5x plus 6. Okay, so what's being multiplied goes in the tracks, okay, and the product goes in the little quadrants, okay? So I want to spend most of the video today looking at factoring trinomials because obviously that's a little harder than just foiling or multiplying, okay? And we're actually going to be talking about factoring for probably the next couple of lessons, so because this is usually one of the biggest things that we teach using algebra blocks. So let's just take it one at a time. So let's say I want to factor x squared plus 4x plus 3. X squared plus 4x plus 3. So you want to, this time notice we don't know what's going in the tracks. What's going in the tracks will actually be our answer. It'll actually be something times something else is going to give us our x squared plus 4x plus 3. Okay, so what you do first is you always start off with the x squared in the corner. Okay, notice it's positive, so it goes there. And then I have plus 4x and then plus 3. So I'm going to get all my pieces out and see if that's going to work. Okay, remember that I need this to be like a perfect, oh, I think I need one more, sorry, one more x. I need this to be a perfect square, and these little units always go up here in the corner. I don't really know why I got negatives, right? It's plus 3. So I said factor x squared plus 4x plus 3. Struggling. All right, so these are going to go in the corner. Notice they could either go like this, or they could go like this. But that's really the only options. Okay, so I'm going to put them like this because the units always go in the corner. And then I'm just going to see if I can fill in these guys and make it work. So notice, to make a perfect rectangle, right, and use all the pieces and have none left over, notice I think I have it, right? Like I have a perfect rectangle. Okay, so the question is not what I have here because that's what I was given. The question is what would need to go in the tracks to make this work. So what would go in the tracks would be x plus 3 here. And then x plus 1 here, right? So in this case, we kind of slide out what's in the center and then just read what's on the track. So the answer, the factored version of the first one is literally x plus 3 times x plus 1, okay? So you might need to draw that on your homework. For now, I'm just going to show you, you could draw all those blocks. This would literally be x plus 3, and this would be x plus 2. Okay, so let's try the second one, x squared minus x minus 2. Factoring is always a little more challenging when you have negative numbers, so I don't want to neglect that and do all easy ones. So x squared minus x minus 2. So we know we have our x squared, so let's just talk about what we've got. We've got minus x and minus 2. Okay? If you think about it, this is going to really be a struggle to get this to perfectly work, right? This one's going to have to go here. And then these are either going to go like this or maybe like this. Okay? And it really doesn't make much of a difference which way we go here. Okay? Except for, yeah, it really doesn't matter. I'm going to lay it out like this. Nope, sorry, like that. So notice that we are 2 pieces shy of making this work, right? We really need another yellow and we need another green. Well, luckily these are paired items, right? So if you want to add, you just have to make sure you add in pairs. So I can actually add another yellow as long as I also add another green, and then notice I have a perfect rectangle all the way around. Okay? And again, remember the answer is what was in the track, right? So what was in the track here vertically would be x minus 2. What would be in the track here would be x plus 1. And then again, we could slide off the middle pieces, and it would be our answer of x minus 2 times x plus 1. Okay, let me gap that out a little bit so you can see it. Okay. So again, notice this works out to be, I'm going to kind of write it like this. X minus 2 kind of went all over the place there, right? And then this is x plus 1. Okay. By the way, some of the methods that teachers teach for factoring kind of model this quadrant method. They just don't say it. So like I've seen teachers use like the box method, and they're just really using a version of this without using the actual full-blown pictures. Okay, so let's look at one. We're going to skip that one. We're going to come back to that one very last. So let's look at 2x squared minus x minus 6. So 2x squared minus x minus 6. We're doing this one. We're going to come back to this one. Okay. So first, let's get the pieces that we need at least to start off with. We might need to add some pairs. But here's my big quadrant mat, right? I need 2x squareds. I need 1x. And I need 6 little negative ones. Now, I can already look at this and know that I'm going to need to add some stuff. There's no way that just one of these is going to cover all of these spots, right? Like it's not going to work, okay? All right, but first let's set out our x values, okay? we know that this looks something like this. We're just missing a whole lot of these, right? And then these have to go in the corner. Okay, notice they can go 6 by 1 or they can go 2 by 3. And you're just going to have to figure out which way allows you to make a perfect rectangle. And you may have to mess with it a little bit. You may have to fudge it a little bit. Okay, so notice if I line it up this way, actually let's line it up this way first. Notice if I line it up this way and I picture what do I need to make this a perfect rectangle? I need 2 here, but I need 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 here. So it's not even. It's not going to work out. Notice though that if I change this to what I had originally, okay, if I change it to this, then notice I'm going to need 3 here, 1, 2, 3 in the positive area, and then I'm going to need 1, 2, 3 here. Okay, so let's lay out what I'm going to add and let's see if visually it's going to work. Okay, so I'm going to add 3 positives, but I can't do that without balancing it and adding 3 negatives. And the key, remember, is does everything line up? Let me slide this over a little. Okay, notice we have perfect rectangles. Well, I mean, you know, if I had my pieces, right? Perfect rectangles in both places. Okay, so remember the question is really what's in the track, right? So this would be x minus 2. And this would be 2x, looks like plus 3. So then if we slide all of this away and just read what's in the track, the factored version is x minus 2 times 2x plus 3. Okay, so sometimes you just have to kind of mess with it. Notice my 6, I had to figure out where that negative 6 was going to be, right? I had to figure out kind of how to lay that out. And so I ended up getting what? 2x plus 3. I guess I could write it like this. 2x plus 3 here. And then x minus 2 here. So let's get rid of that. Okay, and again, if I asked you to, you could draw what was in the tracks. You could draw what was in the squares, all that good stuff. All right, so last one is going to be this one, 4x squared plus 4x minus 3. So that's going to max out my x squared pieces. I don't know about y'all, but I only have 4 of those. So I need 4x squareds. I need 4 positive x's. And I need 3 negatives, negative 1s. All right, so when you have a number like 4, notice that I could either do 2 by 2 like this, or I could do 4 in a row like this. Okay, so you're just gonna have to play around with a little bit, but 4 in a row doesn't ever really work. So if, though, you line it up as this right here, and then know that these are going to have to go down here. Okay, the x's, all x squareds always go in the corner. These always go here. And then notice these are going to go here. It's just like, what do I do with this extra one? Okay, well, this extra one has to stay in line too. It's just maybe going to decide what we're going to need to add here. You really want it to try to line up. It's just mine's being a little cumbersome. Okay, so obviously this is not a perfect rectangle, right? So I'm going to need to add, and notice the way that I have it set up right now, I just need to add 2 greens. And it looks like I need 2 yellows right here, so I think that's going to work. Okay, as long as you're adding pairs, it doesn't matter, right? As long as you're adding the same positive pair as you are negative pair. So if you put this here, and then that there, notice we're good to go. Okay, other than, you know, my stuff being sloppy there. Okay, so then remember your answer is what's in the track, so make sure you can do that. So what's in the track is 2x there, and a minus 1 there, and a 2x here, and a plus 3 it looks like. So if we get rid of what's on the inside, leaving only the track, we'll have the answer, which is 2x minus 1 times 2x plus 3. Okay. Notice if I get much bigger with my x squareds, it's going to be really hard to fit on this mat. So I mean, these algebra tiles are really not intended to do ginormously large factoring problems. Okay, by the time you get to really big, you know, x squared coefficients and stuff like that, then you probably need to have moved past this visual method and, you know, have some methods like maybe the AC method or maybe the box method or something like that. Okay. So on your homework, I'm not only looking for the right answer, I'm looking to see what you did. So you don't have to print these mats off, kind of like I told you in the video from last time, but what you do need is something similar. So you could just four-square it and draw it on your paper, right? Just make sure you mark what's positive and negative, and do make sure you have these tracks in here. So if I ask you to show it, then you just need to, you know, show pictures. They don't have to be super pretty, but show pictures similar to this.